At the Tata Motors stand, this time I have with me the man of the moment in many ways, who's leading the charge. This big change that you're seeing at Tata Motors today, you see a huge, let's say, piece of that puzzle falling into place with brand new products being displayed for the very first time. Mr. Guenter Butschek, it's a pleasure.
Nice meeting you.
And,
thanks.
Thank you for having us. It's an important milestone day in many ways. Do you agree?
Yeah, indeed, as I mentioned earlier in the press conference, we were eagerly waiting for this day in order to do something which was also emphasized in the invitation sent to you, where we said promises delivered is going to be the theme of Geneva this year. Why I'm saying so? A year ago, we actually brought concept cars. And I know that the Tata Motors history was very often, in particular here in Geneva, about concepts. And people very often ask what happened to the concept that was shown 2 years ago, 3 years ago, because only a few products ever hit the Indian roads, not even talking about the global markets. And that's something which we promised a year ago, where we said, although we all call this concept cars or show cars, but what all these cars represent is the future product lineup of Tata Motors. And today, we actually delivered on the promise, because we have 4 world premieres, as we call it, 1 European premiere, as it is the Indian in India called Harrier, and the feedback was accordingly, where everybody said, "Hey, wow, something has obviously changed at Tata Motors."
You kept your promise, and this year, of course, we see the stunning new concept as well, the H2X, which now everybody I think assumes and believes will certainly be a production model, and you've already said next year. How important is it to now take the story to the next step? I mean, you have, like you said, you made a few promises, you've started to deliver on those promises. The market in India is also responding to that. We've seen that with your sales figures. What happens from here?
That's the beginning of the journey, because we have the 2 new architectures, and the architectures, as mentioned earlier, are supposed to enable Tata Motors to actually bring a very differentiated product portfolio in the years to come, which could possibly go as high as 12 to 14 different products, while at the same point of time basing these new products on the same architectures with a high degree of commonality and modularity. We build economies of scale, so in order to really optimize our cost base, while at the same point of time differentiating the product offerings to an extent that they fit into existing sub-segments in the Indian market. And you know, the Indian market is the most sub-segmented and fragmented marketplace in the entire world. But while at the same point of time, due to commonality, to actually build economies of scale. That has always been the problem in the past, because we had 6 platforms. We had a good variety of different top hats. Yes, some of the products were aged, were dated, but the bigger problem was that bringing on any of these platforms a new model did not necessarily give us a very strong improvement on economies of scale. Here we are now in the play, because Omega accommodating the Harrier, and now getting a brother or a sister, it's up to you, with the 7-seater, where the product still needs to be Christianed for the Indian market. On the Omega, on the Alpha, where we said this is also going to serve as an architecture for a family of products. And we even brought a first indication on the family for in 2 dimensions. The one is internal combustion engine of the Ultras. On the other side of the stand of the pavilion, we do have the electric version, because people looked at me a year ago, I'm not quite sure how you looked at me at this point of time, where we said it's battery electric protected. Everybody said, we have heard a lot about protecting for different kind of powertrain solutions, but at this point of time there was no architecture available which really brought a differentiation to the electric powertrain variant. We have it, because the battery
sits. And you've announced it for the market. I mean, you've already
so
said
exactly, this is a production version. Yeah. It's a production version, and honestly speaking, if it would not be all out at this point of time to get our BS6 range of products ready for this back-to-back launch, as it is required by the Supreme Court decision effective as of the 1st of April 2020, this vehicle could go into the market even earlier. But I have limited resources, So therefore we need to set priorities. BS6 is first priority because this is making or breaking the company. EV is opening the next chapter. And with this vehicle, I think we have actually delivered of something where Sailesh Chandra, the president of the newly established vertical e-mobility, some 2 weeks ago at the media roundtable said the second phase. And I do know from some feedback, lots of people expected the second phase is possibly going to be some 3 to 5 years down the road. No, it's 15 months down the road that the Ultras is going to get an electric version, which is a different product, although it's a twin, because it's a flat floor. You have the free-floating cockpit as a kind of reference to what we had on show last year, the e-Vision sedan, where we got raving feedback a year ago. But in all honesty, this was a show car, and we also called it a show car. This year we have concept cars which are effectively production ready. And that's valid for all of the products on show. And you actually summarized something which is very important to me and to the entire Tata Motors team. If we have a show car, where we just would like to claim design, technical features, variants as a kind of test case, but not decided to get into the market, we will clearly earmark it as a show car. Yeah. But in the moment, it's not going to be called a show car. You can assume for the future that it's going to be straight a production vehicle, that we actually exaggerate the design here and there. Take the H2X, even if you fell in love with the tires. These tires will not be available on the series car.
But that's still about 80% of that which will make it production, which is the encouraging part. I think in the past
it's more than 80%.
Even better. Well, you know what I'm saying? Like in the past, it was probably the other way around with many brands, not just Tata Motors. The part you mentioned about the flexibility and modularity that the new platforms give you, especially as you increasingly go to a point. I mean, currently in the market, you still have different platforms, but when you get to that point where it is going to just be these two, what kind of, and let me ask you one thing before I get to my real question. The fact that a lot of these announcements for the deadlines, BS6 or safety or even the CAFE norms, the fact that some of that was known when you got into this plan to do the two platform strategy, do you think that was good timing for you, that you could quickly build some of that into these two platforms?
It's simplifying our plane, there's absolutely no doubt. Because at the point we actually conceptualized these products, not that we had a final date as of when we would go for these changes, but we had at least expected, or we added to the specification for the conceptual phase that these changes might come, because that there was an expected upgrade on the safety side, like pedestrian, for example, additional airbags to be accommodated in the vehicles. That was somewhat known. Was it known exactly as of which date? And we have seen the dates moving several times. Even during my short 3 years period of tenure at Tata Motors, we saw it moving. But the important point was taking it into consideration, making it package protected, like for example electrification. Honestly speaking, when we conceptualized the battery protection, as you now see it in execution on the Ultras EV, we said, why shall we? Because that really brought us back to the drawing board to say we need the long members need to be differently arranged, the crash impact needs to be recalculated. If we would like to provide sufficient space to accommodate the battery pack, the center of gravity of the vehicle, to actually provide best possible safety on the one, but drivability and handling on the other side. So all of this has been taken into consideration, and now we have a very flexible play to say, oh, this is going to come, we're going to go for it.
Now you're well placed.
Now we are well placed, because on these vehicles I don't have to touch the basic structure of the vehicle. If I need to introduce, for example, on a Tiago or Tigor, the requirements on the change in the safety regulations, it's not just going to be protected within the package as is. There I really need to go in steel. There we need to redesign the front end, and you know what is going to happen in the moment I touch my body. It requires a large queue of different validation testing in order to prove the certification requirements of the product. This is all going to be behind us as far as the new products are concerned. And that gives us the opportunity to leverage the initial investment, to be much more agile in our response to changes in the marketplace, may it be regulatory, or may it come from the competition or the customers' expectations, because you mentioned it earlier, you have raised the bar as far as customer expectations are concerned. Our customers are getting more and more educated by what is globally available, and we have even protected, for example, active driver assistance systems. Without going into the details, but you will see at the launch of these products, you will find features which would not be necessarily expected in these kind of products and these kind of sub-segments in the Indian market. But it's all going to be available. So it's a very exciting place because as you have the package protection, each and every additional feature you bring and you roll it out across the same product, the product sharing the same architectures, you build economies of scale, and all of a sudden
it also makes it more accessible for the consumer.
And the solutions become all of a sudden affordable. Yeah. Because in all honesty, India is a market which is getting more and more demanding as far as customer expectations are concerned, but at the same point of time, it will remain a market which calls for affordable solutions. And for us as a native player, so to say, I think we have understood what this challenge is all about. And I think we found a very attractive way to translate this challenge into very aspirational products. In line with our brand tagline, we're saying connecting aspirations. So we are driving aspirations as we get it connected with the solutions on hand.
No, I have to tell you, and I know you will not say this, but I can say it, which is some of this, making certain things affordable, bringing certain new ideas and solutions to our consumer in India. All of us for years have had that expectation from another player. Given the scale that you're talking about. It's great to see that Tata is now doing that because it's now driving the other players to do it. So I am very happy, but never mind my comment.
Oh, it's good. The first time that we could call a trendsetter or a thought leader, but it's appreciated. I take it as a compliment from your side on behalf of my entire team.
It's much appreciated from all of us, I can tell you. And certainly from the people we speak to as well on our platforms. The second place where the same thing has happened is safety. The Nexon has sort of maybe been the cherry on the cake, but it didn't just start there. The fact that you had a very different approach towards safety, again, not expected from an Indian player, not expected from a mass market player. How much of that has changed the image of the company, and then how much of it now changes what people will expect from you going forward on all future products?
The interesting part is, and I would like to rephrase your question if you don't mind, that it has changed expectations as far as the customers are concerned, no doubt. That the first ever Indian vehicle that has obtained the 5-star NCAP rating has actually brought lots of awareness and attention to the subject of safety, where we all know that it has not necessarily been a talking point in the recent past. So I think this Nexon 5-star NCAP already served a great purpose and is about to change the Indian landscape, giving more emphasis on safety. For us, it has raised the bar. Some of my people would say, no, it's not NCAP that has raised the bar. You have raised the bar, because I brought it to a very simple headline to say, wherever there's a star rating, like NCAP, it's going to be all us, and it's going to be all 5. So give me 5 is the theme internally. And on top to all of the other challenges in design, in our engineering department called ERC, in terms of BS6, etc., we are currently running a huge investigation across the entire product range of what needs to be done in order to actually provide the safest vehicles in the Indian market out of Indian production from an all-Indian OEM, meeting 5 stars across the product portfolio. Sometimes it's a question of minor adjustment. For others, we possibly need to combine it with a mid-cycle enhancement, or as it is usually called, a kind of a facelift. Yeah. But we will leverage each and every opportunity, knowing that it comes with cost, but where we are of the opinion safety is of utmost importance when it comes to sustainability of mobility, sustainable mobility in India. Because what is the government's investment in infrastructure all about? What is the investment in customer awareness all about if the products can't keep up with the safety requirements of an increasingly more enhanced public or individual transport system. So, and we need to drive it. It should not just be driven, as you know from earlier interactions, by changes in the regulatory environment. I'm a very strong believer these kind of enhancement needs to be driven by the industry as such, because safety needs to be a competitive factor, as it's supposed to be a competitive advantage of Tata Motors as we speak.
But tell me this, I mean, that kind of, let's say, drive or focus within the company, while it's very admirable and it's great to see for us, I know it puts a lot of pressure in terms of the investments required, because you mentioned, of course, you need to invest to get the vehicles up to this standard. Some amount of that, like you said, may be coming from regulations. That's the pressure that's equal on all manufacturers. You know you have to do it. But this other stuff that you've taken on, where you're trying to improve benchmarks which are much above what is required by regulation, how difficult is it to keep those investments going when on the sales side, you are still in a recovery period? You're still, I mean, of course, we're seeing great, return of the buyer to your showroom.
We call premiumness, but lots of customer perception is still about value.
Both from your, the Tata Sons perspective and also the shareholder perspective, how do you justify those investments?
First of all, on the subjects where you would like to differentiate yourself from the competition, like safety, you actually need to build awareness. As long as safety is not a talking point, you will not be able to differentiate yourself.
The Nexon sales prove that. I mean, the sales went up.
Lovely. Last month was the highest sale of Nexon ever. In an environment where the market was very subdued in its demand. So therefore, Nexon, I think we are extremely well on track. And it's a pleasure to see how you can actually get into a market segment in which we never were before, in still a relatively short period of time, because Nexon is now in the market for 15, and meanwhile, almost 18 months, and it has consistently been increasing its fan community, because it's almost, you are a fan of the Nexon, you're not just a customer or driver of the Nexon. But the question of affordability is not necessarily a question of pricing power, it's a question of intelligent design. Now coming back again to the role of Alpha and Omega architecture. As I said, this is package protected. So there are lots of thought process went into the specification and conceptualization of these products
behind you as well.
In order to make sure that we have display without really going into the structure of the product. So therefore adding it, it's a question as we see that there is demand, as we do see that there is its pricing power, and the interest of the customers to go for such kind of upgrade, we can actually play the game. On the other products where we really need to go into the structure, you need to actually bundle intelligent packages. What is an intelligent package? As mentioned earlier, if there's a facelift, it's a wonderful opportunity to say, okay, we're also going to touch the metal, because it's anyway going to enhance the facelift, the scope of the facelift, where customers really take the vehicle as something new. Although it's possibly still something minor. But the minor is not only what a customer needs to see, it's also what a customer can experience in case of, not a case to be envisaged when it comes to safety, but if we can actually get it, if we can get it to a 5-star rating, and we just make it part of a somewhat bigger package, and the bigger packages ahead of us, they are bigger. Because if you just take meeting the regulatory change in pedestrian safety, this is not a small change. That really goes into the metal. Now, if you know what needs to be done on the metal structure of the body structure of the vehicle, to meet at the same point of time a 5-star GN cap, that's the opportunity. So driving it standalone in isolation, it's a very difficult proposition, because customers most probably not going to pay for it. But if you can intelligently bundle it, having it on the agenda. If you don't have it on the agenda, we will not come to the idea to bundle it. But if you put it high on the agenda, then you seek for packages where you can bring this in, and as people and as safety becomes a talking point, then it's actually attractive to have it in the package as such. It's a huge shift in paradigm. Not only for us at Tata Motors, I think even for the Indian market.
How is it possible to keep those investments going? Because as a business, it's difficult to sometimes convince shareholders that this is important. You've already done it, so which is why I'm asking.
And you have a product strategy. The product strategy has certain pillars. Safety is one of these pillars, because you might recall at the inaugurational session of the Move Summit last year in September, where I had the pleasure to represent a Tata Group and Tata Motors. I actually called for a CES. And you know, there was a big laughter in the room because people thought the first managing director of an OEM was actually applying for additional taxation. No, it was not about taxation, it's about connected, electric, shared and safe. It was a call for improvement of safety as the need of the hour, because
the market moves up.
Let's not dream about 5 million newly registered vehicles in a 5 years' time. Let's not dream Indian market can become number 3, as it just recently become a number 4, if we don't crack safety. And this needs an inclusive approach, triggered by the product, but also as far as awareness and also reinforcement of traffic laws is concerned. And if we can actually join forces, I think India is going to be a much safer place on its public roads than India is today. And that's not only relevant to the four-wheelers or multi-axle trucks. Everybody, you as a pedestrian, being on a bicycle, being on a bike, on a scooter, I think this needs to be the ultimate objective if we would like to grow. Because otherwise sustainability is not going to be determined by zero emission, it's going to be determined by not being safe in the future.
That's a fair point. Now, if you remember, I had started a question and then jumped to something else. So I come back to that question now about in the future, once you are looking at a situation where all your products are only on these two platforms, what happens at the manufacturing end? Because some of those changes in manufacturing are already happening because of the Harrier, because of the Altroz. I know Harrier is from Ranjangaon, Altroz comes out of Pune. What happens at Sanand? So will you have a situation where...
Harrier comes from Pune.
Yeah.
Nexon comes from Ranjangaon.
Oh, yeah.
From here, the other way around.
The other way around.
Doesn't matter.
But my question is that would you have a situation where you'd almost have one plant doing Omega, one plant doing Alpha? Is that the eventual, let's say, streamlining that will be required?
No.
Or will you keep it flexible?
Look, if I would be in the position to do a kind of greenfield exercise, that would possibly be the ultimate stage, to say I have an Omega factory, I have an Alpha factory. The normal module size of a factory would be in the vicinity of 200,000 units, and then I would actually put these kind of modules in place. And I would always keep an eye on having highest degree of commonality, while at the same point of time, highest degree of flexibility, so that if, let's say, a hatch segment all of a sudden sees a drop, that I can compensate by a compact SUV, which is the big advantage of being on these architectures. Now, reality at Tata Motors is unfortunately brownfield. For exactly the reasons you have mentioned, we have this very advanced factory in Gujarat, in Sanand. Then we have the K block, which is currently undergoing a major revamping, refurbishment in order to accommodate in the future. That's now an important part. Alpha as well as Omega. So that means the larger models of the Alpha architecture as well as the Omegas, despite the fact that we have differentiated, separated body shops, as far as paint and TCF is concerned, they are all going to run on one line. It's somewhat unprecedented, high degree of complexity, because if you imagine that this one and this one is going to run on the same TCF line, so the line balancing, line side supply, that all calls for a huge change in operations. But as we go for this change, we become more flexible, almost to the degree that we can deliver customized product solutions in the future. Our logistics become more sophisticated, but as they become more sophisticated, become more efficient. And we get to a complete different play in terms of work share between our suppliers and us. That's one of the reasons why we are driving with a very strong focus the restructuring of our strategic supplier base, where we expect to be mid of the next year at around 400 suppliers. Starting point 3 years ago was 1,500, but these 400 not only technically, logistically, these guys are also commercially sound partners on which we can actually build and on which we can actually make the call to change our setting completely in the near future. Coming back to Sanand, Sanand is going to be, as we speak, it all might change. In the first instance, a dedicated Alpha architecture plant for the lower end of our Alpha. I was going to
ask you that the volume you would look at for that car should mean Sanand. Logic says.
Could mean Sanand.
But said lower end of Alpha
but as always mentioned, if you look at this car, you immediately start developing ideas how other derivatives of the same architecture, possibly taking this as a donor car, because here the donor is the architecture. The next phase is finding donors where you take vehicles as they are and where you take the vehicles into a different segment by keeping a high carryover from an existing one and modifying it to an extent where you differentiate, but where the degree of commonality is even higher than by just sharing the architecture.
No, and that becomes even easier or better when you move to next generation cycles of existing products, right? Which will then move to these. I mean, I asked you that yesterday. You said
and then coming back to Sanand, so dedicated Alpha architecture at the lower end of the product portfolio, where we have not shown how this idea could look like. And this is still something that needs to be seen in the context of the transition from the currently produced Tiago and Tigor, which will undergo a mid-cycle enhancement. So there we still have some time, and then we will see how this is going to translate. And before you ask the question, there's still some market volume below a Tiago and Tigor, where we don't have a dominant play today, but where we would like to have a play, and where we in particular see great opportunities as far as electrification and the concept of urban mobility is concerned. So, and then we are possibly again back to Sanand, because Sanand, in the way it has been designed, is not designed to produce Harriers, for example. Sanand is designed to actually produce vehicles up to 4 meters roughly, and to actually bring, with a high degree of commonality on the architecture, additional models into Sanand. It's going to give me more than enough utilization of the technically available capacity in Sanand. So therefore, the art of playing the commonality is a question of how to leverage our brownfield, while at the same point of time restructuring it as we would go for greenfield. And the concept we have looks very promising, but it's a transitional period because with the launch of these products, we are not going to switch completely to Alpha and Omega. Would be ideal, but there's a transitional period. But this is going to help us to do all of the structural changes.
One last area, going back to the safety point, because yesterday when we were chatting, there was something that you said which was interesting about how you've now taken sort of ownership of that space. But even though the Nexon may be just the one product that's kind of really driving that right now, in very quick time we're going to have a whole slew of products doing that for you. The investments that have gone towards it, in the Indian market context, despite the fact that yes, some safety regulations are kicking in, the fact that you're so much higher than that, do you think it will start to pay you dividends in terms of sales and customer acceptance, appreciation, volume very quickly because of that? Because it's a space nobody else is occupying.
Look, the point is the Indian market, we talked about it, is highly segmented. That's the one part. At the same point of time, it's highly competitive, and it's largely dominated by not even a handful of players, although we have almost 4 handful of players in the entire market. And there's currently a balance that some come in, believing in the opportunity, while others actually go out. Let them make individually their decision. What we are consistently seeking is what really differentiates us from the crowd and really makes us an aspirational brand to actually get on the top of the consideration list of our customers. The one is Impact Design 2.0 that has done a great job for Tata Motors, that we brought something on the road which looks different, which is per se aspirational or which is a head turner. And interesting was when we had international media also for the press conference, and after the press conference, the most frequently asked question was when are we going to get these vehicles in the UK, in the Netherlands, even in Germany, because they said highly attractive products which really bring a design difference, surprisingly enough, coming out of India. Well, the key message is, the last thing we would have...
So what do you tell those people?
We said so far we did not have these products. Secondly, our products did not meet safety requirements, so global standards in terms of safety and emission. We are now about to close all of these gaps. All of this is package protected to even be taken to the next level. Why not? The investment in building a network for sales and service, after-sales services in any of the markets I have just mentioned is huge. So therefore, the question is there another alternative?
Some network exists for you already.
There's some network exists, but is it going to be dense enough in order to justify the investment in these markets, in the products? By the way, all of these products are package protected for left-hand drive version.
Yeah.
That's also new. In the past, it was a major issue to convert a right-hand drive to a left-hand drive. That's the reason why we have rather a low number of products available. These are all package protected and they can be converted as we speak. On the other side, as long as there's no rock-solid business case for an expansion globally, because of all of the investments required to build a network, etc., India is about to become the third largest market. So we have the largest market opportunity on our doorstep. Let's actually stay focused on this market. And as the products meet global standards, and they are now meeting global standards as we speak today, we will certainly not let opportunities go if opportunities occur. And my personal view is that in particular the electric variants we have, where we leverage our initial investment in the architecture for an internal combustion engine, having at the same point of time a battery electric protection, which brings clear differentiation on the outside, but even more so as far as the interior design is concerned. Flat floor. You would not expect it from an architecture which is designed for internal combustion engine. You would not expect to have a free floating cockpit. But it was all part of the thought process when we specified the product. So for electric vehicles, I could imagine that we find a faster global approach, not by getting into the private sales, but possibly going into dedicated fleets. And we have already seen a good number of contacts coming from dedicated fleets globally, where they say we intend or we operate a fleet which we would like to electrify. What is the price point for these kind of vehicles? I'm not going to give you the price point because it's not decided and not to be announced yet. But the expectation is, and that's something we can underline, that this is a fair expectation, that these are very cost-conscious solutions. Which could possibly change our destiny in the fleet business to help converting existing fleets into zero-emission electric fleets in a much faster speed. Because if this is in a particular city, it's almost a kind of a depot-managed kind of environment. So charging is not an issue, maintenance is not an issue. You can have a relatively small network in terms of service capabilities. So all these thought processes running in parallel, but again, we are an Indian player, and the closest to our heart is India. And with the new opportunities, we first would like to leverage this opportunity, as we will not the other opportunities let go.
All right, great, thank you. It's always a pleasure to get all those details from you. I think we can't wait for some of these products to hit the market. I'm sure I'm not the only one saying that.
They are going to come soon.
Yeah, very exciting times. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.